Welcome back, and it is the Calotes type species we are discussing. And here in this presentation, we'll be looking in detail about the Calotes arterial system. The Calotes arterial system, it starts with the heart and includes all the arteries going on supplying the different parts of the body. And from the ventricle, you see here, the calotes, the heart of the calotes, you can see it gives off three arches. Okay, the one given in dark shade, it is the pulmonary arch. Okay, and these two are the right and the left systemic arch. Okay, so here you can see the right systemic arch going this way and coming down and meeting the left systemic arch on this side. Okay, so these three are the arches, a pair of systemic arches, that is the right and the left systemic arches, and a single pulmonary arch. These are the three arches which are given out from the ventricle. And these three arches, they are twisted around each other at the base and covered by a fibrous sheath. Regarding the pulmonary arch, you can see that it arises from the right portion of the ventricle, that is the cavum pulmonale, this portion. It arises from the right portion of the ventricle, and then it as soon as it reaches the anterior part of the heart, it divides into two, the right and the left pulmonary arteries, and each of these artery enters the lung on its side. Okay, and it carries deoxygenated blood. So that is regarding the pulmonary trunk or pulmonary arch. Here it is pulmonary aorta. Okay, now a pair of systemic arches. The right systemic arch, so you can see the right systemic arch. It starts from the right systemic arch arises from the left side of the ventricle and carries pure blood or the oxygenated blood. Here you can see the right systemic arch. It winds around the left and then moves off and bends or curves down along the sides of the heart and then reaches the posterior part of the heart, isn't it? While the left systemic arch, it originates from the right side of the heart, the ventricle, and it carries mixed blood. And both these systemic arches, it cross each other, and you can see it curves backward and round the esophagus, and then it moves posteriorly and it joins together to form a single vessel, and that is known as the dorsal aorta. Okay, so this is the dorsal aorta reaching till the tip of the tail. Okay, so I hope it is clear. We have the right and the left systemic arch. The left systemic arch arises from the the right side of the ventricle, and it turns toward the, you can see, curve backwards along the sides, and it joins with the right systemic trunk from the other side. Okay, so this is about the three main arches. Now we can see the different blood vessels which arise from these arches. Okay, we can just trace the right systemic trunk. Okay, the right systemic trunk, as soon as it emerges out from the pleural cavity, we can see that it gives off a branch. Okay, here you can see, and this branch is known as the common carotid, or otherwise it is known as the innominate. The common carotid, it divides into two, the two carotid trunks. Okay, so as soon as the common carotid emerges out, it divides into two branches, the right and the left carotid arches. Arteries, and this run parallel to the systemic arch of that side. You can see this is the right. Here you can see the right carotid and the left carotid. It runs parallel to the systemic trunks of that side. Okay, and then these later, each carotid artery, it divides into two. Okay, here you can see. But just before this division, it gives off another branch, which is another vessel. It is known as thyroidal. So from each of the carotid, the left and the right, a thyroidal vessel, it emerges out, and this thyroidal artery, it supplies the neck region. Okay, and soon after that, the carotid divides into two. The external carotid, this branch, and the internal carotid, this branch. Okay, the external carotid on its way, yeah, these two supplies the head region actually, the head region, and the each external artery, it gives off a single laryngotracheal. Here you can see, right? And then further anteriorly, it divides into two. And after the laryngotracheal, you can see it divides into two, the buccal arteries. Okay, almost like one laryngotracheal artery and three buccal arteries are produced from a single, or given off from a single external artery. Okay, and each internal artery, if we trace, you can see that it divides into two, a palatine and stapedial. And these internal arteries supply blood to the brain. The internal carotids are, you can see here, it is also connected to the systemic trunk of that side. And this, the vessel which connects the internal carotid with the systemic trunk of that side, it is known as the ductus caroticus. Here you can see a ductus caroticus which connects the internal carotid of the right carotid branch with the right systemic trunk, while here you can see the ductus caroticus on the left side. Okay, and this is about the carotids. Okay, so if we can see that the right systemic trunk, as soon as it emerges from the pleural cavity, it gives off a common carotid branch, and this common carotid, it divides into two carotids, that is the right and the left. Okay, and on each side you can see it gives off a thyroidal branch, and soon after that you can the carotids divides into two. Okay, external carotid and internal carotid. From the external carotids emerges the laryngotracheal artery and the buccal arteries, while from the internal carotid you can see palatine and stapedial emerging out. Fine. So this is about the what you call the carotids. It supplies the head region, the neck region, and the brain part, etc. Okay. Now the internal carotid of each side, it communicates with the systemic trunk of that side through ductus caroticus. Okay. Now we can see the systemic, right? The right systemic trunk, you can, as we have already seen from the both the systemic trunks, an esophageal artery emerges out. Okay, and downwards you can see from the right systemic trunk a common subclavian arises, and it divides into two, the right and the left subclavian, and it supplies the shoulder region, okay, or the forelimb region. It supplies blood to the forelimb region. Similarly, another single vertebral vessel arises from the right systemic, supplying blood to the vertebral column. Then we can see that the right and the left systemic trunk joins together to form a dorsal aorta. Okay, and now we can see that the blood vessels to various organs, it emerges out from the dorsal aorta. The first blood vessel or first artery to emerge out from the dorsal aorta, it is the anterior esophageal artery, a single one you can see over here. It arises from the central surface of the dorsal aorta, and as the name indicates, it supplies the esophageal region. And then we have the parietals and the gastrics. There are several pairs of parietal arteries emerge out, supplying blood to dorsal muscles and vertebral column. While gastric arteries, again, there are about 4 to 8 pairs may arise, and it supplies the, as the name indicates, it is supplying the stomach region. Further down, further posteriorward, the dorsal aorta gives off a single anterior mesenteric, a single celiac, and single posterior mesenteric. And these three blood vessels supply various parts of the alimentary canal. The anterior mesenteric artery, it runs obliquely backward and supply the intestine, while the celiac artery, it runs anteriorly and supplies the pyloric stomach. Posterior mesenteric, it is otherwise known as hepatointestinal artery, and it arises from the right side of the dorsal aorta, runs obliquely downward or backward, supplies the gallbladder and the intestine, and you can see it bifurcates there, isn't it? Now further posteriorward, the dorsal aorta gives off a pair of genital artery, the right and left genital artery. It supplies blood to the gonads, testes, or ovaries, as the case may be. Now, further posteriorward, the dorsal aorta gives off pairs of renal arteries. It is usually more than one pairs of renal arteries that supplies the kidneys. Okay, and posterior to renals, you can see dorsal aorta gives off what you call pair of common iliac arteries, and these common iliac arteries, each of the artery, it further enters the hind limb of the particular side, and from each of the common iliac emerges pelvic artery, which supply pelvic girdle, and later each branch divides into the external iliac and the internal iliac, and it supplies the various the muscles and the different parts of the legs. At the same time, just before the bifurcation, you can see there is a vesicular branch from each of the common iliac, and this vesicular branch supplies the bladder. So you can see common iliac, it enters the hind limb, and on the way it gives off pelvic branch or pelvic artery supplying the pelvic girdle, vesicular artery supplying the bladder, and then it divides into external and the internal iliac supplying the muscles and the other structures associated with the hind limbs. The dorsal aorta, further the common iliac, it continues as caudal artery, entering the tail of the Calotes. Okay, so this is the arterial system. So we can see that from the ventricle, three main arches arise, that is pulmonary arch and two systemic arches. The pulmonary arch, as soon as it emerges out from the pleural cavity, it divides into right and the left pulmonary arteries, and these enters the lungs on its side for and carries the deoxygenated blood, while the oxygenated blood is just taken via the two systemic trunks. Okay, this is the right systemic trunk. You can see here it takes deoxygenated blood, while the left systemic trunk it takes mixed blood. And the right systemic trunk, as soon as it emerges out from the pleural cavity, it gives off a branch which is known as a common carotid. The common carotid further divides into two right and left carotids. Okay, the same time the right systemic, it moves curves backward, and on its way it gives off esophageal, then left what you call the common subclavian artery, vertebral artery, and posterior to the heart, the two systemic trunks, it joins together to form the dorsal aorta. And on the way to the tail, actually the dorsal aorta, it gives off one esophageal artery, like pairs of parietals and gastrics, then single anterior mesenteric, celiac, posterior mesenteric, a pair of genitals, uh, pairs of renals, a single pair of common iliac, and then dorsal aorta continues as a caudal artery. Okay, so this is all about the arterial system. Fine.